Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're all doing well. I am Shahid Rahman, the Executive Director of American Muslim Institution, and we are so happy to have all of you here joining us from all over the country tonight. We have a great evening planned, a reflective evening as we look back on our American Muslim community in the last 20 years since 9/11. Earlier this year, we passed the 20-year anniversary, and it was a solemn time and a great time to reflect. Tonight, we'll hear back from reflections of so many individuals from the political sector to the media sector, sharing their thoughts on the last 20 years. And tonight we hope to present a vision of our next 20 years. During 9/11, I was actually a high school student. And for me, I remember thinking, this is a time that as an American Muslim community, we need to get involved and engaged and play a larger role in society and in our communities. Prior to that, religion had been a deeply personal matter. In the last 20 years since 9/11, we found ourselves more organized and more active than previously before, especially in areas we were underrepresented in sectors like media, journalism, and politics. The culmination of the last 20 years has shown that we can achieve great things together if we work together. To get us started tonight, we have a trailblazer, who AMI's board chair, Dr. Akilur Rahman. For those of you familiar with his work in the DC metro area, no introduction is necessary, and I won't be able to do him justice. In his esteemed business career, he founded a publicly traded pharmaceutical company and patented cancer-treating drugs. While navigating a successful business career, he continued to work toward improving the lives of his community. He established the Montgomery County Muslim Foundation, amongst many other local, state, and national organizations. Dr. Rahman, the floor is yours.
Dear friends of AMI, Assalamu alaikum, good evening. Today's program of AMI is a very exciting program, and we have lined up quite a few speakers for you. As you know, 9/11 has been a worst incident in American soil. And because of that, Muslims went through the worst kind of Islamophobia. Muslim homes were spray painted, Muslim mosques were raided and defaced, Muslim cars were burned out, and very openly on the roads and malls, Muslims were called terrorists. Muslim women and daughters who were wearing hijab, they were molested on the street, in the mall, and they were called terrorists. This situation is highly disturbing for the Muslims, and since his belief in Islam is very strong, they started doing things as a resilience for their situation. The Muslim resilience really took place at that time. They started hundreds of interfaith meetings all over the country. They have focus groups who were meeting with the people of other religions like Christianity, Judaism, and were having meetings over dinner and tea and coffee and discussing at length what is wrong with the Muslims and what is wrong with the Christians and Jews in our American society. Muslims started taking interest in giving charity. They went out into the urban areas of the country and fed thousands of hungry at that time. It was a routine to go twice a day, twice a week into those places and feed the hungry people. Muslim physicians started their philanthropy in a full extent. They opened free clinics to those people who do not have any health insurance. Thousands of people were treated by the Muslims without any cost, and those clinics are now all over America. This resilience of Muslims got the best reward in 2007 when Mr. Keith Ellison was elected as a Muslim person in Congress, US Congress. He was the first Muslim to be elected as US Congress member. He took oath on the Quran to safeguard the Constitution of America. Mr. Keith Ellison is a very dynamic person. He was sharing and chairing quite a few subcommittees in Congress, especially those committees which are connected to the human work or the work to improve the condition of America. He has passed so many resolutions during his tenure, and in 2019, he started contesting for the position of Attorney General of Minnesota. He got elected there and took his job as a real challenge to provide justice to the poor Americans and especially the black Muslims who were deprived so badly of any kind of justice. Mr. Ellison is a very dynamic person and he's here this evening to share his feelings about 9/11 and the resilience of the Muslims. Thank you, Mr. Ellison. You are here.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Keith Ellison, Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, and I'm so pleased to be spending some time with the American Muslim Institute. The bottom line is it is important for us to talk about Muslim resilience. We cannot just have a story. We cannot just have a story of hardship and difficulty. We have got to have a story of, yes, we took some shots, but we, based on our faith, get back up and keep on contributing to this world. And that's why I wanted to start with showing you the front cover of the Newsweek magazine, a national magazine, which talks about Muslims being resilient. But this is today. Years ago, we had tougher days. In the aftermath of 9/11, I remembered this moment so distinctly when Peter King held a committee hearing on the subject of whether violent radicalization among American Muslims should be the subject of a Homeland Security Committee. And he had this hearing, and before this hearing ever took place, I said, you should not do a hearing on Muslim violent extremism. You should do one on violent extremism, and you could talk about the Ku Klux Klan, white nationalist groups, whoever you want, and maybe some Muslims too, but not just Muslims, because it makes it look like Muslims are associated with crime and terrorism. He didn't care. He marched ahead anyway. And this, in my view, was a very tough moment. But in every tough moment, great things happen too, because that's when I met Talat Hamdani, and I was able to talk about her courageous son, 23 years old, who ran into the burning towers when other people, quite understandably, were running from it. Yet he went in there and he was a first responder to save lives, but he was not able to save his own life. And we lost his life that day, and yet his name is inscribed among the heroes right down there in 9/11 to this very day. This was a tough moment, but it also held within it beautiful, beautiful courage, faith, and heroism. You know, but not only did these crazy hearings like this happen, we also had acts of terrorism committed against the Muslim community. So, for example, this in Minnesota, the Dar al-Farouk bombed, literally bombed through terrorist attack. It is good, and we do celebrate the fact that the person who did it was held accountable. Thank God that there was no one hurt, but they bombed a mosque. And yet the person who did it was recently given 53 years in prison for that action. But imagine the terror, the fear, the concern of the people who go to Dar al-Farouk Mosque in Bloomington, Minnesota, having had a terrorist leave their own home in Chicago, Illinois, drive all the way up to Minnesota just to attack people because of their faith. That is the situation. But it's not just bad individual, crazy, racist people, anti-Muslim people. It's also in the highest echelons of American politics, where we've seen Islamophobia, where this Muslim ban, as the president proudly proclaims his signature on a document excluding Muslims because they are Muslim. Bottom line is, even in the presidency, anti-Muslim hate screaming out, and yet people didn't sit around for it. Americans of all kinds said no ban, unite for people. Muslims, together with their neighbors who are Christian, who are Hindu, who are Jewish, Buddhist, no faith at all, crowded airlines and airports all over the country to stand with their Muslim neighbors. And this is a picture of that. And I don't want you to ever forget that while we had to deal with a racist, horrible president like Trump, who wanted to discriminate against our community, we had neighbors who stood up and stood with. And so now today things are going pretty well. How proud I am that the head coach of the New York Jets is a Muslim. I mean, and that the head of the Federal Trade Commission, Khizr Khan, 32 years old, leading economic and consumer policy in our country, is a Muslim woman. And then Faz Shakur led a major presidential campaign. Faz, one of the sharpest political minds I know, led the Bernie Sanders campaign, a major political campaign, did a great job, and we're all very proud of him. But those are just a few folks who've been doing well. Those are the high-profile folks. Let's never forget the folks who've been leaders in their neighborhoods, in their communities, on their jobs, who may not get headlines and may not be the subject of great acclaim all over the world, but who are still making meaningful contributions, demonstrating that resilience. And, and that brings me to another point. Recently, not only has the Muslim community been resilient, others have too. You all will recall the so-called Ground Zero Mosque, which all of us just thought was the most stupid and absurd thing, because some Muslims wanted to build an Islamic center in the vicinity of 9/11 to demonstrate Islam's openness and compatibility with democracy and our opposition to hatred and violence and terrorism. Their good intent was completely rejected by the haters who called it the Ground Zero Mosque and blocked it and opposed it. And yet here we are today, 2021, many years after 9/11, when the head of the Anti-Defamation League, who was not the head of the Anti-Defamation League at the time, a Jewish civil rights organization, but the new one, Jonathan Greenblatt, he apologized. And I know some of you are, maybe you appreciate the apology, maybe some of you don't, but the apology is there nonetheless. I'm grateful for it, because even though it was harsh and it was bad and it made us all feel wrong, aggrieved to have, an Islamic center opposed and called the Ground Zero Mosque. Not everybody who was part of that bad action has apologized, but the ADL has, and I'm grateful for it. And it's showing that the wall of anti-Muslim hate, the wall of Islamophobia is crumbling. And maybe we can one day look at this moment and say, great. And I just want to say to you that Muslims are reaching out. People who are not Muslims are much more accepting of Muslims, but that doesn't mean that it's over. We may have come together in organizations and groups to protect ourselves as Muslims, but we stay in those groups to do good and to do justice and to protect civil rights, also because we're Muslims. We came together to help Muslims and defend their civil rights because they were under attack, but we're going to continue, God willing, to stay together, even if no Muslim has to worry about their civil or human rights, because we have a responsibility to be the very best neighbor. because we have a responsibility to make a meaningful contribution to the communities in which we live, because we have a duty to be a blessing to our neighbors. And I just want to say that it was my privilege to lead the successful prosecution of Derek Chauvin to a group that included Muslims, including one of my top folks at the AG's office, a young man named Kian Dosti, who is a Muslim young man who helped work on this trial, and many others who you see standing there with me. And we joined together with some Muslim leadership that resulted in the conviction of Derek Chauvin, who brutally murdered George Floyd. So I just want to say the world does not need another selfish, self-interested ethnic group. What the world needs is a group of people who believe that everybody is entitled to dignity and respect and decency, who will stand up to promote what is right and to oppose what is wrong. That's what the world needs now. And that's what I hope the Muslim community will always strive to be. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Attorney General Ellison. We're pleased that you were able to join us today. Thank you for reminding us of our responsibility to do good for all of our communities. Your examples really shed light on how far we have truly come as a community, and especially that Newsweek cover you referenced speaks volumes. It's worth mentioning again, you were the first Muslim elected to Congress, and you have set a worthy example for all of us. And speaking of worthy examples, I'm pleased to invite Ambassador Islam Siddiqui to the virtual dais. He is the president of AMI and has had a long and storied career in state and federal government, serving both in the Clinton and Obama administration as the Undersecretary of Agriculture and later as a chief agricultural negotiator. Ambassador Siddiqui, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shahid. Friends and supporters of AMI and distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to you all. Thank you for joining us to attend AMI's 6th annual gala event this evening. The theme of this year's event is American Muslim Resilience, 20 years after 9/11. We are fortunate and honored to have 3 nationally known elected officials and 2 celebrities as the speakers with us this evening to share their perspectives about the resilience of American Muslims since the horrific events of 9/11 20 years ago. We wish that we were meeting in person this year instead of meeting virtually. Although most of us have received 2 to 3 COVID shots, we decided to be prudent and be safe, so we decided to hold this meeting virtually and take all the precautions until the pandemic is over. In spite of the many challenges imposed by COVID-19, AMI has continued to focus on its primary mission of number 1, countering Islamophobia, number 2, networking with and celebrating the success of American Muslims in the media. It's worth mentioning that 3 of the Muslim media celebrities, Hassan Minhaj, Ayman Mohideen, and Mehdi Hassan, who have their own nationally televised shows now, have featured and been a staple item in AMI's annual program in past years. And the third objective is to promote social justice in America and human rights in America and around the world. AMI cannot continue this important work alone without your engagement and financial support. Therefore, I thank every one of you who have generously donated to AMI in previous years and urge you to continue to do the same in this year and future years. That being said, now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce the next speaker for this evening. While he needs no introduction, I would be remiss if I did not mention Terry McAuliffe. He's a friend of our community. He stood by us and with us and spoke out against the President Trump's travel ban from the 6 Muslim majority countries in January 2017. During his 4 years as tenure as governor of Virginia from 2014 to 2018, he implemented many economic initiatives, bringing billions of dollars into economy, building a 21st century infrastructure in education and transportation. As a result of his leadership, Virginia economy grew and added over 200,000 jobs to the Commonwealth during his tenure. Governor McAuliffe also served as chairman of the National Democratic Committee from 2001 to 2005. Since he did such a phenomenal job in leading Virginia last time, he is once again the Democratic Party's nominee for governor this November. Please join me in welcoming the next governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe.
Hello, I'm Terry McAuliffe, 72nd Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, running to be the 74th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I want to send my best wishes to the American Muslim Institution for all of the great work that you do to make our state and our country an open and welcoming place. And that's what I did as the 72nd Governor. I fought hard to make sure that everybody was treated with dignity and respect, no matter whom you pray to, the color of one's skin, or whom you love. And I had to fight back a lot of horrible things that had gone on. As you know, I led the fight against President Trump when he put that Muslim ban on. And I'm very proud. I was the first elected official. I went up to Dulles Airport when Virginia residents, U.S. citizens, were detained at Dulles Airport because they had come in from one of those countries. Imagine that. Hours in detention with 2 children without access to legal counsel. So as you know, I went right up there and I demanded that everybody be released. I said, I'm the governor. This is in my state. I want them released. So I will always fight to make sure everybody is treated with dignity and respect. I'm still shocked and horrified about what we saw in Charlottesville in 2017. I think of 1,000 neo-Nazis and white supremacists spewing the most vile hatred I've ever seen. And once again, I called out the president. I actually talked to him on the phone that day and said, you need to come out and condemn this hatred, the divisiveness. And of course, we know he didn't do it. So there were good people on both sides. So I want you to know that I'm going to fight hard for you every single day. To the 200,000 Virginia Muslims, thank you for what you do to make this the great Commonwealth that we have today. Thank you for the diversity that you bring, for the involvement in our small businesses community, and for just helping to lift people up. And that's what I'm going to do as the 74th governor. I'm going to have a record investment in education, paying our teachers above the national average, raising the minimum wage, getting everybody access to broadband, getting our most at-risk 3 and 4-year-olds access to pre-K. I got us out of a chaos before of the Great Recession and sequestration, and now I will lead us out of this horrible COVID pandemic. But we're going to do it as a team. Teamwork, that's what it's all about. Dignity and respect for all. So thank you to the institution for the great work that you do. And once again, to all the 200,000 Muslims who live in Virginia, thank you for making us the great Commonwealth we are today. And guess what? We're just starting. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor McAuliffe, for your powerful comments. Now it is my pleasure and honor to introduce the next speaker. Senator Ghazala Hashmi is a friend of AMI, as she has spoken many times at AMI events before. She is the first Muslim woman elected in 2019 to the Virginia Senate from the 10th District of the Commonwealth. Senator Hashmi was an educator before entering politics, and where she taught for 25 years at a community college. She's a distinguished educator and administrator. Professor Hashmi received her PhD degree from Emory University. Please join me in welcoming Senator Hashmi to the floor.
Hello, I'm Virginia State Senator Ghazala Hashmi, and I'm so delighted to join you today. I appreciate the good work of the American Muslim Institution. Thank you for this opportunity to reflect on American Muslim resilience 20 years after 9/11. I think that each of us has very clear memories of that tragic day that changed our world in so many ways. For me, that September morning began in a bittersweet manner. It was my younger daughter's first day of daycare, and she was 1.5 years old, and I remember how she cried so hard when I dropped her off that morning. But by the time I returned to pick her up, I was the one who was feeling utterly shattered. The news of the planes crashing into the Twin Towers and into the Pentagon had been streaming nonstop on the radio. And I sat in my car that morning and I just wept. And I had to compose myself so that I could go back inside the building and pick up my daughter. For us as Americans, that day is seared absolutely into our memories. And even if we were not directly in New York or in Washington, D.C. or Shanksville, Pennsylvania, we collectively turned our eyes upward. We scanned the skies for planes, and we feared what might be coming next. But for those of us who are both American and Muslim, I think we knew what was coming next. We knew that the word terrorism would be linked synonymously with the word Muslim. And we knew that our brothers would be scrutinized even more at work, in their daily lives, and as they traveled around the country. We knew that our Muslim sisters who dress modestly, and particularly those who cover their hair, would be harassed in public, challenged at their jobs, and even face discrimination. And for those of us who are parents of school-aged children, we feared that they would face bullying and perhaps be targeted for scapegoating. So 9/11 was, in important ways, a clear wake-up call for Muslim Americans. Personally, I was proud of the ways in which the Muslim community responded. Immediately, humanitarian efforts were made to support families who had lost loved ones. Muslim volunteers joined in efforts at each of the sites of the tragedies, and so many people worked hard to respond to the false, demonizing narratives of Islam. Over time, as well, we've seen tremendous engagement with interfaith communities and dialogue, an increase in academic studies, and we've had many books now written by Muslim American authors that provide a counterbalance and perspective to the narrow narratives that often take up more of the public awareness space. Critically, we've also seen American Muslims awakening politically. According to recent data, nearly 200 American Muslims representing a wide variety of ethnicities ran for office nationally in the last election cycle. I decided to run myself in 2019 after having worked in the academic space for nearly 30 years. I realized then that while my presence in higher education was good and necessary, Muslim Americans also needed to represent at all levels of government. It's important for me to be in spaces where this particular faith community has long been absent. It's important for my colleagues in the Virginia General Assembly to see me, and through me, the thousands of constituents that they themselves represent. We now need to continue this necessary work of political engagement. We need more people in government positions, not necessarily just in elected office, but also appointed to cabinet positions and agency roles. We need representation on boards, commissions, and at PTA meetings. We need people volunteering and leading in community organizations, political campaigns, and in every area of effort that impacts our lives, our children, and the broader communities. In essence, we need to be visible, present, contributing, and engaged. American Muslim political organizations have been in place now for several generations, and we need to continue to build on their efforts and their successes. We also need to learn from some of the missteps, and we need to expand their range. Young people are increasingly engaged in a variety of political landscapes. They should be encouraged to continue to be a part of the communities in which they live, all communities. Women and girls especially should be supported. The profound tragedies of 9/11 were scorching. They taught us some hard lessons. They also demanded that we take the pain that was handed to us and craft a path forward focused on justice, humanity, and compassion. All of these elements are the hallmarks of Islam itself. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, Senator Hashmi. The trauma and legacy of 9/11, it's shaped and impacted our lives tremendously, but it also moved us to work collectively. As we look toward the future, we wanted to share with everyone watching tonight where we are as an organization, how we've navigated the last 2 years during COVID, and where we'd like to go. But again, just to touch on the last 20 years, especially in the last 4 years, we've seen a rise in hate crimes, mosque attacks, and Islamophobic rhetoric spurned by a $300 million industry. We've seen the impact, whether through the travel ban, increased bullying, or run-of-the-mill discrimination and racism. I want to take a moment to highlight our strategy, which is by working with the media and through the media, we have the ability to make the highest impact with the greatest potential for scale. The media can change hearts and minds, and we'll hear a lot of that later tonight. Despite significant improvements in representation and diversity as of late, there's still a great deal of work to be done. According to an AP News study from October 2021, literally a few days ago, out of the 5,900 newsrooms reached out to share data on diversity efforts, less than 250 decided to share this information. While we have seen a tremendous increase in Muslim journalists and visible representation of all communities, we are a long way from making systemic change, a change that represents broader America. We plan to lead an amplified and constructive approach, having conversations and interactions among people of differences, which will in time pay dividends in our society as it heals from negative stereotypes and divisiveness. As an organization, we plan to utilize our influence and network to engage with those that have the ability to impact change. One such strategy involves engaging with the likes of the SEC and FCC to better work towards disclosure requirements for those on the board and staff of these media companies. Sometimes the best disinfectant is sunlight. Last year, as many of you are aware, we refined our strategy, and this year we wanted to provide an update. You can check out the slides on your screen. Yes, our community is filled with up-and-coming reporters, editors, commentators, and journalists, and it is critical that we continue to connect them and open the door for them to connect with one another. That's a retort we've heard again and again from the journalist community, from our community. By being a platform to connect these individuals, we can have a better sense of where the industry is and how we can work to make it more inclusive for all Americans. And this slide kind of shows all of the different individuals that we have had the opportunity to work with in just the last years, and those we hope to work with in the future. While we build on a track record of the last few years, 2021, things really began to take off. We worked on 3 important tracks: allyship, human rights, and our work with the media. Both allyship and human rights will be discussed later on in the program. This year, we spent a great deal of time and effort engaging with journalists, especially from our community, to have a stronger sense of their pain points and opportunities that they see. We have done work to build a foundation, reaching almost 100 different journalists and staying connected. We would like to spend the next year working on building those relationships with executives from the industry, where diversity is especially lacking. Our focus on corporate social responsibility with large companies will pay dividends in the long term. Our focus on engaging with stakeholders from the government will also help us shape the way the media decides to portray different groups or doesn't decide to. This year, we hosted a panel on the business of media, and the message was clear. Make the business case for diversity, and diversity will follow. This year, also with the support of Zakat Foundation, we organized a fellowship program to train future journalists and provide them the tools to be successful. During the program, they had the opportunity to connect with Muslim and non-Muslim journalists alike, over 20 in all, over the course of 6 weeks. You'll hear from one of those students tonight. Next year, while we continue to scale the program, we're laying the seeds for a more ambitious undertaking, and that is to connect one student to one journalist for anywhere from 6 to 12 months. This year, should our budget allow, we'd also like to financially support 1 to 2 young upcoming journalists under the age of 35 to investigate and write about something that has traditionally been ignored or overlooked. We want to show those journalists in our community and those that are making a name for themselves. This is a two-way street. While you work toward better representation, we will support you. I hope you can all appreciate and understand the importance and necessity of our work and continue to support us as you have done in the past. I hope you've all taken a moment to jot down the information where you are able to make your donations, either online or you can send us a check. So how are we going to spend the money and where have we spent money so far? I think the best person and most qualified person to answer this question is AMI's treasurer, that's Isa Abbasi. For those of you not familiar with him, he is the CFO of Teaneck, New Jersey, and he manages a budget of over $70 million. Isa, go ahead.
Thank you, Shahid, for the kind introduction. Assalamu alaikum, respected guests. 2020 was a challenging year for everyone, and AMI was not without its challenges. In 2020, the organization generated $73,805.09 in income. Our total expenditures were $113,271.89. In essence, 2020 was a make or break time for us. With your support, we came back stronger. While Shahid discussed the great programming and impact we've had in the first 10 months of 2021, the future is definitely very bright on the financial side. During the first 3 quarters of 2021, AMI generated $90,481.29 in income and had expenditures of $83,843.75. However, despite our strong financial stance, AMI is not out of the woods yet. While the balance may get us through to the end of this year, it is not enough to continually grow AMI. For 2022, we'd like to raise $150,000 to grow out our team and continue to grow our impact. Please consider making a generous donation this evening. We thank you in advance for your contribution. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Yasmin, who has benefited from one of our programs.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Zargapur. Currently, I am a senior at the George Washington University studying political science. But about 2 years ago, I got to be a media fellow with the American Muslim Institution, where I explored the fields of journalism and politics. It was really interesting because I got to tour places like the New York Times, PBS, and I even got to visit the Netflix studio in New York. But this truly was a monumental time in my life because not only did I realize that there's a place for Muslims like me in these fields, but it showed me that there's institutions out there like AMI that are willing to equip young Muslims like myself to become successful in these endeavors. I believe that AMI is worth investing in and supporting because it gives Muslim students like me the right tools to become successful and navigate my professional interests, and it helps me become prepared for the next stage in my life.
It was a pleasure working with you in 2019. We're looking forward to a post-COVID free world where we can bring students and connect them to journalists in person once again. And speaking of journalists at this time, as this program is about our American Muslim community and 9/11 and reflections and thoughts and our resilience, we've put together a couple of clips from different journalists from our community sharing their thoughts for this program and the impact that 9/11 had on their lives. So we'll play that right now.
You know, on 9/11, I was actually in Lower Manhattan, and I walked down the street corner on 8th Street and 6th Avenue and watched the second tower collapse in front of my eyes. And it stays with me to this day.
I remember feeling devastated and also worried for my family, worried we might be targeted when we were going out running errands.
Muslims across the United States and around the world, that there was life pre 9/11 and life post 9/11.
And I remember being pulled out of school early by my parents and heading on home, and I didn't know what was happening and how it would really affect, my life from that
People
point.
demonized me for my ethnic background, for being Arab, and then for being Muslim as well later on. And myself and all of us in our community at the time were called to answer for the worst in our community.
And I think 9/11 was definitely, for many of us in our generation, a pivotal point where it really made us realize how little we've been portrayed in the media before and how poorly we were being portrayed from that point on.
It also solidified my decision to become a journalist and bring the stories of these seemingly faraway places and people to an American audience in an attempt to sort of bridge those gaps.
I think the biggest change is that we're more visible and represented in ways that we never were before, and people are more aware of us and the nuances than they ever were when I was in high school. So definitely a work in progress, a lot of change to be done, but I think as we see more and more Muslim faces in the media, we're all helping shape that narrative going forward.
He has done a great job at reclaiming the narrative of showing what it means to be Muslim in America. And I think we do that by being outstanding citizens in this country. We are running for public office, we are doctors, we are lawyers, we're journalists.
And so I would encourage everyone to continue to do the work, continue to fight for representation, inclusion, and equity.
Stay active, get involved in the media, get involved in politics. That's how we tell our story. That's how we make America even more beautiful than it is.
I hope you were all inspired by that video and those testimonials. As we transition the program, we hope to keep the momentum alive and going with two of our board members who will speak more about what we've done and why you should consider supporting us. At first, I'd like to introduce Rafiuddin Ahmed. He began his career in public service by working in the local Masjid Muslim Association of Virginia. Rafi was also the chairman of Public Affairs and Civic Engagement Committee of the mosque, which created programs to educate politicians from all parties. From 2006 to 2009, Rafi held the position of vice chair of Coordinating Council of Muslim Organizations of Greater Washington, D.C., which represented 80 different organizations. And in 2017, he was a founding member of the Virginia Council of Muslim Organizations, VCMO. And also, I'd like to invite Shafiq Khan to join us. Shafiq was responsible for leading all of Marriott's distribution channels. These include Marriott.com, among the world's retail sites, Marriott's global reservations and global distribution systems, and emerging online travel intermediaries. He also had stints at US Airways, Booz Allen and Hamilton International in marketing and sales assignments in Pakistan International with Pakistan International Airlines. He is also the founder and president of Teach the World Foundation, an organization dedicated to using digital technology to educate the world.
So Dean Abdullah is our speaker, who you've heard from already, and he is someone that really does not need any introduction. By trade, he's a lawyer, and he turned into comedy, and he's been on many shows from Comedy Central, and he's done many programs, and he is one of the most famous Muslims in the media that we know right now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Abdullah.
Thank you very much. Salam alaikum, everyone. And I want to thank the American Muslim Institution for inviting me here and also applaud your great work in the area of Muslims in the media. It's so vitally important to tell our story. Also, I have to say, I think you finally found a way for Muslims to do things on time. It's pre-taping, because usually any Muslim event I've been at, I'll be told like you're going to go on at 8 p.m. inshallah. It's always inshallah time. Well, with this, it actually works better for everyone. You pre-tape, you do it on time. We're changing norms here. So today I'm really talking about how much the media landscape has changed in America for our community in the 20 years since 9/11. And quick headline of it all, it's been a remarkable development for the better. We have moved so much forward, but there is so much more work to be done. I mean, a lot of work, but we are now building the infrastructure where you can see, and you can say it optimistically, things look good both in news media and entertainment media. They're two different forms of media, both vitally important that we get involved in it. To remind people, in the short time after 9/11, when I look back, there were two types of news stories about Muslims. The bad one, we were described as militant, gunman, or terrorist. Then the occasional good one, where we were described as alleged militant, gunman, or terrorist. It was not a good time. And there were no voices from our community. At the time I used to joke about, it could be worse. They could give hurricanes Muslim names. That won't help us. Turn on the news. Hurricane Mahmoud is coming. Run for your life. Mahmoud's a killer. But in the last 20 years, we've seen a change. We've seen it for the better. You see more Muslims involved as journalists, behind the scenes, where I interact with some of them, and in entertainment media as well. But let's take a look at the big picture here. Let's take a step back about why does this matter? So you might be like, well, okay, great. Someone's not going to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. They're going into the media. What does it matter? It's actually on some level a form of activism, but I also want to point out for people, it can be very lucrative. Like your child's not going to be in poverty by being in the media. And there's a sense like, oh, only being a doctor is stable, or being an engineer or a lawyer. No, for people in the media, it can be, the compensation is fine, and it can be really great if you get well known. So I want to put that out there first for parents and grandparents and anyone who's thinking about going into the field. But look at the big picture here, and to be serious about it all. Polls show, just a Pew poll came out about a month ago, right around time of 9/11. Do you know what percentage of Americans actually know a Muslim personally? You might be surprised by this. Less than 50%. According to the poll, 53% of Americans, 53% say they don't know a Muslim. So you're talking about 47% say they know a Muslim personally. So 53% of our fellow Americans don't know us personally. What's also interesting is that polls show that if you know a Muslim personally, you have a more positive view of our community and of our faith. It plays that role. Unless the Muslim you know is a jerk, they're generally going to be a human ambassador for our community, answer questions, be the counterbalance. Because to me, I believe chipping away at misconception, it's sort of like an iceberg. That's the analogy I use. And you chip away piece by piece by piece. So somebody knowing one Muslim is a start. On my radio show on Sirius XM, every single night, I open by saying, hi, I'm Dean Obeidallah, and I want to be your Muslim best friend forever, your MBFF, as I say it. And it's sort of tongue in cheek, but it's based on these studies that have been going on for years. This is not new. The Pew poll that came out a month and a half ago, for years it's tracked that. If you know a Muslim, you have a more positive view of us. So why not assign everybody a Muslim? That's my sort of like the Adopt a Highway program. Everyone gets a Muslim friend. Great. The only problem is there's only a few million of us. We can't do it that way. It is physically impossible. That's where the media comes in. The media is a way to reach people that we can't meet on our own. It's a way to show up in their living room, literally through the TV set or through now the computer or social media. It's a way to tell our story in our own terms, which is so vitally important, and be, I would say, a force for good in pushing back against misconceptions and outright bigotry and lies. So not knowing us comes with a price. Not knowing a Muslim personally, and those views of people who don't know a Muslim, as you might imagine, are decidedly negative, comes with a price in two ways. One, politicians gin up hate of us. We saw in the 2016 campaign, even before that 2012 campaign, I wrote about it, tracking it there, started like Newt Gingrich and Herman Cain, And then flash forward 2016, we lived through that. It really began with Ben Carson saying he doesn't want a Muslim as president. Then Donald Trump took it to levels I never thought were possible or hope would ever happen in this country, with calling for a ban of Muslims and the idea of Islam hates us. And I'm not being partisan in any way by saying that, because those people are all Republicans. If a Democrat said any of those things, I can assure you I would write about it. I would call that person out. I would denounce them in the media. Protecting our community from hate is not partisan. If anyone on any side says anything about our community that's hateful and bigoted or simply ignorant, we've got to be there. We have to stand up, push back on the bigotry, or if it's truly ignorance, help them understand what they don't know about us. Because sometimes, even myself in the past, I would assume someone saying something comes from a place of hate, when often it came from a place of ignorance. They simply didn't know. So, when I mention Trump and Ben Carson, that's not partisan. I might be a partisan person, but not when it comes to this stuff. There's no partisanship whatsoever. So you've got, the one hand, you've got the words of politicians demonizing us, calling for banning Muslims from coming to this country. And what happens from there is that the words of a politician can inspire good, bad, or very ugly. And in 2016, we saw the very ugly. There were more hate crimes against the Muslim community in 2016 than in the year after 9/11. Let me repeat that. There were more hate crimes against Muslim Americans in 2016 than in the year after the worst terrorist attack on our soil in our lifetimes. And that was because of the words of politicians ginning up hate of our community. And conversely, and I wrote about this in the past, after the Boston Marathon bombing, there was almost no hate crimes against our community. And the reason was there were Muslims in the media and there were no politicians ginning up hate of who we are. So to tie a line through this, people don't know us. Politicians demonize us because we're an easy, small group. The media is the way to reach people. The media is the way to tell people our story. And there's also another heartbreaking event that's happened, and that people not knowing us and demonizing our community. And that is bullying of Muslim students. There was a study done by CARE in California before the pandemic, when people were still in school all the time. We found over 50% of Muslim American students in California reported being bullied for their faith. Over 50%, that's meaning 1 out of 2, it's their daily existence as a Muslim in their school being bullied. And here's the worst part. That study found that 20% of the incidents of bullying were happening by the teachers. The teachers, the people you go to for help, were the ones doing the bullying. They were the ones, and sometimes it came from a place that they thought they were being playful, telling a joke in front of the students. For example, like a Muslim student had a backpack, and, oh, is there a bomb in your backpack? And everyone laughs at the student. But we know that is corrosive. We know that is dangerous. So that's going on, and it's not over. Just this week in New Jersey, in Maplewood, New Jersey, a Muslim student, a young girl wearing a hijab, her teacher ripped her hijab off her head and said, "You have beautiful hair, you should let everyone see it." How do you not know in 2021 that the hijab, just like for the Sikh community, is essentially an article of faith for certain people? But this teacher thought it was acceptable. Outrageous. So the media. So let's break it down. We get involved in the media. We tell our story. We're a presence in people's homes. We become their friend. And there's 2 forms: entertainment and news media. Let's start with news media, because that's, people know news media. I think we've seen the greatest progress in that field. And, the work of this organization has been helpful. I watched the videos. I've seen the great people you had speak in the past years who are here, who are now leading people in the news media field. But 20 years ago, there was no Muslim American anchor that we knew of. Look at MSNBC right now. You've got Ali Velshi, Ayman Mohadeen, and Mehdi Hassan. I think the M in MSNBC stands for Muslim at this point. It's great. I write for MSNBC, and I get paid to write now an article a week for them. They are the most embracing network of any. They are truly, and Yasmin Vesuvian, I'm not sure of her faith. I never asked, but she's of Middle Eastern heritage. She's Iranian American. They really have a network that looks like America over there. You look at CNN, they have Fareed Zakaria. There is no Muslim American contributors on air that I know of. I actually write for them as well. I've been writing a column a week for years for them. And I'm one of the rare people who write once a week for MS and once for CNN. But CNN needs more people on air from our community. And then you have Fox News. They're Fox News. There's nothing you can do. But here's the thing for the Muslim community, like the American Muslim Institution and other groups, is meeting with the executives of these networks. I talk to friends in the Black community, and I learn a lot from them. Their effective activism is getting together, and they met with executives at networks and said, you don't have people from our community in front of the camera or behind the camera or in the corporate offices, which are so important. The corporate offices are overlooked, and we don't talk about that. We talk about people on air all the time. People behind the scenes have the power. And I can tell you this, good news, I can give you more. There are now more Muslim journalists. NPR, the White House correspondents of Muslim American women. You've got Huffington Post, Slate, you name it, they're everywhere. And they're all coming up. They're young, younger than me. And they're coming up. They are going to be stars in the world of the media. There's also not many, but now more than I've seen before, of Muslim Americans behind the scenes as producers, as bookers. That's the secret power in news media. You have to understand, it's not Ali Velshi trying to get me on air, and he actually does. He's a great guy. But it's the booker behind the scenes who pitches you at pitch meetings about, hey, we have a topic. Let's have this person on, this man or woman on to talk about it. It's the producer level. It's the booker level. That is where the real power is. And then above that, it's like vice presidents of certain positions. And I'll give you an example of how a person on a smaller level in a TV network had a huge impact on what was on the screen. And in 2011, I made a comedy documentary. I co-directed it with my friend Nagin, called The Muslims Are Coming. It's a comedy doc. We had 5 Muslim American comedians. We went to the deep South, to Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. We did free comedy shows. 3 of us made it back. We're going to miss those other 2. No, we all made it back. But the point was, we did free shows to go out there and talk to people and meet them and answer their questions. And it's still available. It was on Netflix for a while. It's still available on Apple and stuff like that for a couple of bucks. That's not the point. I'm not trying to sell you on watching The Muslims Are Coming. It's that we were trying to get media coverage, and there was a young guy at the time who was very low level at NBC. He was like one step above production assistant. And a friend of mine put me in touch with him. He was Muslim American. I told him about what we were doing. He goes, this sounds great. I'm going to pitch it up the ladder and see what happens. And because of him, it ended up on national TV on NBC with Brian Williams. At the time, he had a show, like a magazine show, Rock Center. And Harry Smith, the famous journalist, came down when we were filming, because we were in the South. They actually flew him down there. And that person is Sharif Majmoul. And you guys know him at the time, and now he's a producer. He was like a low-level guy. But my point is, even in the smallest positions behind the cameras, we can have an impact on the content. And that's what our goal is. It is the content to change so that it's fair, that it represents us, that we can tell our own story, which is so vitally important. We have to tell our own stories. It cannot be, even well-intentioned other people telling it, nice, I like it. We need to tell our own story. We're doing that more and more. So you've got that going on in the news. Let's talk about entertainment media. Again, if you have a child who wants to be a comedian or an actor or a writer, a screenwriter or a director, don't freak out. There are opportunities. The industry now is more embracing than it's ever been. 20 years ago when I was starting, it was not that embracing. I don't think it was discriminatory. They didn't care about us. They demonized us. And I'll give you an example, because we talk about 9/11 to today. The demonization in the entertainment media world of Muslims started way before 9/11. There's a great book by a man named Dr. Jack Shaheen. It's called Real Bad Arabs, R-E-E-L, like movie Real Bad Arabs. And if you read the book, while Arabs are in the title, it's because Hollywood uses Arab and Muslim interchangeably. From the mid-70s to literally right before 9/11, the book came out. In that time, there were over 300 films which showed Muslims in a negative light, as terrorists, as sinister businessmen, as the sheik who's abusive to women, and women as belly dancers. That was it. But all these negative images, it was 10 a year for 30 years. Hollywood had invested, they had their reason, it was just about profit, I assume, to demonize us. And post 9/11, entertainment media got a little more responsible. You probably saw it like on Homeland. They would have, the one good Muslim and then about 100 bad Muslims. Before, they didn't have any good Muslims. So they had one good Muslim who usually would get killed by the bad Muslims. But at least you had this one Muslim working with the authorities, doing a good job. Things have changed from even that. That was, and I remember people applauding Hollywood. Look at that. They're showing a good Muslim. Yeah, and he gets killed by the bad ones. Now we're actually seeing way beyond that. You've got Hassan Minhaj, you have Rami Youssef. Asif Manvi's been my buddy, he's been around forever doing stuff. He's on the show Evil on CBS, and it's called Evil. He plays a Muslim guy, and guess what? He's not the evil person in the series. He's just a Muslim American guy who's like a tech guy. It has nothing to do with evil in the sense of Muslims. It's a supernatural show. You have more women than ever involved in different things, but for now, you see the leadership of men, and I hope that's going to open up doors for women as well. We need our entire community to be represented in entertainment media. And, you know, Katie Couric years ago said, Muslims need their own Cosby show. Right now, we want nothing to do with Bill Cosby. But the point is, and she made a very valid point, the Cosby show was not just iconic, it actually had an impact on opinions. There's been studies about the Cosby show. It showed for many white families, it was the first Black family ever invited into their living room. And they were doing it through the television set. And for the Black community, they got to see a Black family. One was a doctor, one was a lawyer. They were successful, they were upper middle class. And what a breath of fresh air, inspiration it was from the community to see this, as opposed to being demonized the way we have by Hollywood for years. They have been as well. So having shows like Rami Youssef, and we need more. There are more shows in development right now to tell our story, vitally important. There's only certain people who will come to watch a news show. There's only that many people who will come to hear a lecture on Muslims. But entertainment media, if it's a funny show, people are watching it for the entertainment. And if they happen to learn, you know, my goal is always making people laugh while making them smarter. You really got some good stuff going on there. So that's why entertainment media is so important. You know, I have a dream, like the new James Bond movie just opened. My dream, a Muslim James Bond. Instead of coming out and saying Bond, James Bond, he comes out, he goes, Abdullah, Abdullah, Abdullah. It could happen, inshallah, when we'll have a Muslim James Bond. Not me, it might be one of the, maybe Hassan Minhaj, he's pretty cool. So he might be the Muslim James Bond. We'll see how that works out. But all kidding aside, entertainment media plays a huge, underappreciated role in defining a community for the bad or for the good. And now we're on the other side of the good. We are finally getting to the point where we're telling our story. There are more opportunities, and partly there are more opportunities in entertainment media because there's more. It's not just a handful of networks. It's not just a handful of cable networks now. Streaming platforms, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, you name it, they're out there. There's opportunities. And again, it can be very lucrative. So you're not going into becoming poverty and a pauper just to help the community. And I say that to incentivize you to go get involved. I understand not everybody wants to be in the entertainment field. I understand everyone doesn't want to work in news media. But what I will ask all the doctors and lawyers and engineers out there is support people who do. Support organizations like the American Muslim Institution. Support any community members who are trying to make a difference in these fields. In the beginning, it can be very hard. And, you know, with AMI, from what I saw on your website and the work you've done in the last few years, is putting people together, connecting them. That's the key, because there could be a young Muslim American living in anywhere. They live in North Dakota. They can live in Georgia. They don't know where to go, how to have a connection, who to be there. And I can tell you, I have not met any Muslim American in this business, either in news media or entertainment, who will not help someone else who wants to get involved. There's no magic wand. I can't hire you and give you a show, but I can put you in touch with people in different areas. All of us can. We want to do that. We understand this is more than a career. It is a sense of activism for our community. And then when you bring this all together in the bigger picture, this affects politics. This affects electing officials in a certain way, because again, it's combating hate, defining us who we are. And through this change in entertainment media, news media, we've seen an uptick in Muslim Americans being successful running for office. After 9/11, in the years after 9/11, there were no Muslims in Congress. That didn't happen until 2006 with Keith Ellison. Now we have three, the most ever. We have Keith Ellison as the Attorney General of Minnesota. the first Muslim American elected statewide. He will not be the last. There are many more who are going to be there. We have Muslims now elected to offices from school board to state legislatures across this country and still running for office as we speak, running for office. And next year in 2022, I imagine the midterms, you'll see a lot of Muslim Americans. It's all hand in hand. To me, it's the idea of telling our story through different ways. One is through news media, the other is through entertainment media, and the other is through public service, being elected official, helping people, showing you care about this country so much that you want to serve as a public servant and you want to help all people of all backgrounds. What better way there is to define us as Muslim Americans and showing what we're really about helping people in need, which to me is so much about our faith and what I really believe we're about in its essence. So that's where we are. We're in a place where the past was very dark. There were times in the years in the mid, like 10 years ago, that there were glimmers of light. Now it's a bright light. The sun is ahead of us. There are great days ahead for our community. And it's about supporting us, supporting organizations like AMI, supporting any other group that's trying to get Muslims connected into the media, into news media, entertainment media, and also politics. I have to add that, it's so vitally important. And grassroots activism is a lecture for another day, but again, that's also important, building allies with other communities that need help. We are all in this together. As Martin Luther King talked about, that we share this common garment of destiny. And what affects one community indirectly affects another community the same way. We're sharing that together. So thank you for listening to me. I hope it's helpful. I'm sincerely available. People want to email me. I'll give the people here at AMI my email. They can email me with any questions or comments. We are in this together. The future is brighter. I could see a day where we're going to have Muslims having network TV shows. We can see them as more anchors on different networks, maybe in Fox News, and maybe as a Muslim president one day, inshallah. Inshallah, but I mean inshallah, yes, not like inshallah, that's never going to happen. No, inshallah, it's going to happen. I'm not kidding. We were on that trajectory. We're together. So I'm proud to be here today. I'm proud to be a part of this, proud to work with AMI on this lecture today. Thanks very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Dean, for those comments. They're quite optimistic, and I am very confident perhaps one day, very soon, we will have an American Muslim president like you're suggesting. And I also appreciate the fact that you're taking time from your schedule to also take a couple of questions. So we'll queue those up right now and transition into that immediately. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aisha Lee. I'm from Springfield, Virginia. So thank you for speaking to us today. Dean, I have a question for you that kind of relates to your industry and just in general. So post 9/11, like a lot of us Muslims and Arab communities, we've become like answerable to anything that someone who identifies as a Muslim does, so whether it's a crime or something bad that they've done. So as a person in media primarily, how do you deal with these generalizations where it's like, it somehow shifts to us that it's like, oh, if someone does something bad, we kind of have to justify saying, oh, we're not like this.
That's a great question. And for my own trajectory of life, pre 9/11, I was essentially a white guy. I'm of mixed heritage. My dad's Palestinian, my mom's Italian. And when I was white, one of the benefits of white privilege is never having to answer for the worst in your community. In fact, no one asks white people to answer for the worst in their community. In post 9/11 America, as I became a minority because society told me I had to answer for the worst, because people would say, what's up with Muslims? Why do you people do this stuff? Or what's up with Arabs? That I, over time, embraced this. And now I'm unapologetically a minority, and I identify as a minority. It's a great question. It's challenging, and it's for each person to decide. There were people, we had an internal debate in the community years ago. Should we be denouncing terrorism by some Muslim we've never met who's across the world? And you get on TV and they're like, do you denounce this? And then some would say, we have no choice. And others say, no, we have no connection. We're not going to talk about it. There's no easy answer. What I learned from making the documentary, The Muslims Are Coming, and traveling in the South, is talking to really nice people in the South of all different backgrounds who are non-Muslim. And the one thing they kept saying to us is, why don't we hear Muslims in the media denouncing the terrorists as much? And if you don't, we're going to think you agree with them. And that was a wake-up call for me. So after that, I began saying, look, this is not who we are. This is not who our faith is. It's not what it's about. Now, I think we're 10 years past that. You know, if someone's going to be, say, somehow you were responsible in any way for the bad acts of a fellow Muslim, they're being a bigot at this point, because we're so beyond 10 years ago. Because it generally comes from hateful people. If it comes from a place where someone is truly wanting to know why, those are the people we have to talk to. We have to answer the questions. If someone doesn't know a Muslim, knows nothing about our faith, and says, is it true that your faith tells you to do this or that bad thing? Those are the people we have to engage in a conversation. The bigots are the ones in the media that they make money off demonizing us. So it's for each person to decide. In the media, at this point, I tend not to say, obviously this person does not represent Islam. I'm hoping we're beyond that. But if a situation comes up where I feel compelled to, I will.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Dean. So I'm Nadine Mansour, currently calling from Chicago, but based in New York. So my question for you is, you talked earlier about the progress that Muslim Americans have made in news media, and you yourself have had your show on SiriusXM now for 7 years. I remember being like the inaugural assistant for it, and your show has gone from a weekend show to now, 5 days a week. So I want to know, on the flip side, what do you think, to what extent have the perceptions of Muslims by regular everyday Americans have changed throughout those 7 years? And maybe even you can comment on 20 years since 9/11. And I want you to particularly share with us, based off of the questions that you get in the Ask a Muslim segment on your show, where you like solicit questions from everyday people. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Nadine. It's good to see you. Nadine worked on the Dean Obeidallah show when it was on SiriusXM only on Saturday, and it went from 2 hours a week on Saturday to then it went 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, and now it's 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week on SiriusXM. Polling, I found it really interesting, the polling, like the Pew poll that came out, and I was stunned to see that still 53% of Americans don't know a Muslim. And if you see their view of us, the ones who don't know us, it's not all bad, but it's not very good. And sometimes I think we're beyond that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so many years from 9/11. Our community's been so involved. We're in the media now. We're in politics now. How could people have negative thoughts of us that aren't based in reality anymore? Like these misconceptions, they still harbor these misconceptions. Again, 53% of Americans, as of a poll a month ago, don't know a Muslim personally. So if all you see about us, if you only catch a negative news story here and there about us, and you're not watching Rami's show, or you don't know Hassan Manhaj's, and you don't care to watch MSNBC, they're still not hearing who we really are. They're not hearing what we're about. That's what we do need, Muslim Americans in conservative media, on Fox News. We need Muslim Americans who run as Republicans as well, because they become the human ambassador for our community within a place that really needs some Muslim answering questions. I think things have changed. I don't think the anger towards Muslims is there as it was in a few years after 9/11. And then a few years after the 2016, 17, 18 campaign. To me, one of the highlights in showing that more people liked us than I knew was when Donald Trump as president signed what we call the Muslim ban, they call the travel ban, and people flocked to the airports across the country to stand up for us. And they knew it was bigoted and they knew it was hateful. And that was one of the most moving things I've ever seen in my life. I always remember that. So I think things are getting better, but I've got to be honest, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think for older generations, their views have not changed. They're static. They don't know us well. They might not like us. Some might actually hate us. Keep in mind, when Trump called for a ban on all Muslims in 2015 during his campaign, 2/3 of GOP primary voters, 2/3 agreed with the total ban on Muslims coming to this country. I don't know if those views have changed, but I know the younger generation is changing because they're the ones growing up with us. They know who we are. So I am more hopeful and optimistic going future, but I don't want anyone to think like things are perfect or that there are people who don't hate us or that a politician won't use anti-Muslim bigotry in the future to score political points in certain parts of this country. It's still going to be effective for them. Just like anti-Black bigotry we're seeing now and white nationalism being mainstream. So it's not over. The fight continues, but we endure. We have to be resilient and keep battling.
So at this time, this is a person who actually needs no introduction. I really mean it, ladies and gentlemen. Khizr Khan, when he took on and spoke in 2016 at the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia, I happened to be in that hall filled with 20,000 people, ladies and gentlemen. And Khizr Khan pulled out from his pocket a copy of the Constitution. He told Donald Trump, you need to read what the Constitution says, and you cannot put all these bans and restrictions on Muslims. What I'm trying to tell you is this is a man who has the guts to speak out, and he's known all over the country. So one thing he did, which is applaud here, he established a center for constitutional literacy and national unity. Not only that, he is the proud father, and I am sorry for his loss. He's the Gold Star parent of U.S. Army Captain Humayun Khan, and our respect and his goes and duas goes to his family and Humayun Khan, dua maghfirat. So please join me in welcoming not only Khizr Khan, prior to this, his resume. He recently was appointed by President Biden as the commissioner of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. This is the body we have worked with in terms of shining the light of violations of human rights in India and religious freedom. So we need him in that position. Hopefully he will help us because he's very much of a champion of constitution and democracy and human rights, not only in America, but all around the world. So with this brief introduction, please join me in welcoming Khizr Khan, our leader of Muslim community and now the commissioner of the Commission on USAF. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace. Friends, I speak before you in my personal capacity and not as a newly appointed member of the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom, so that I don't burden you with my commission responsibilities. First, I am grateful to Ambassador Islam Siddiqui, Shahid Rahman, and other leaders and members of American Muslim Institution for their leadership and for inviting me to speak today. I am asked to share my comments on how Muslim American narrative has shifted in the last 20 years and how to claim our full citizenship by service to our country and by participation in the democracy of our country. Most of you are aware and witness to the rampant Islamophobia after September 11, 2001 in the United States and around the world. We as American Muslims withstood the violations of our civil rights, human dignities guaranteed in our Constitution, and to some degree still observe these violations throughout the country. So instead of taking your time to remind the past, let's see how we as Muslim Americans responded by participation in our democracy, by claiming our full citizenship. Here are some facts. In the 2020 election, 170 candidates ran for political office versus less than 50 in 2016 and 2018. 22 Muslim candidates ran for congressional districts in 14 states. 5 made to the general election and 3 were elected. They sit in the United States Congress today. 48 Muslims ran for state representatives in 22 states, with 23 winning, with 6 made history as first Muslim to be elected in a state office. 13 Muslims won municipal seats. 33 incumbents were re-elected, no one losing their seats. 6 ran for judicial seats, with 4 winning. And as you remember, the Muslim ban of January 2017, yours truly was among the first Muslim Americans to file amicus brief challenging the Muslim ban executive order by previous administration. Though the result was not in my favor, but we were heard in the highest court of our country. So in the limited time I have, I wish to ask you all, within the reach of my voice, please remain engaged with organizations like our host, American Muslim Institution. Continue to register yourself and family and friends to vote. Be candidates for elected office. Volunteer to join the local government boards and committees statewide. This is how you remain relevant. Your voice is heard. You serve our democracy, our constitution by full participation. There are many examples of other faith and ethnic communities for us to follow. Remember, 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, where Chinese Americans were declared that they must leave the United States. 1942 Japanese American Internment Executive Order. Catholic Americans were titled spies of the Pope that have come to destroy America. Irish Americans were only allowed to work on janitorial jobs. Look how they responded. So we have risen to the occasion. As I gave you the facts of 2020 election, our journey is not complete. We have more work to do for ourselves, for our children, for our democracy, and for our constitution. And now that as a community, we have become a winning difference in most tight races. Believe me, I have traveled throughout the country many a time for the last several years, and I have seen the difference that Muslim American community makes throughout the country in very tight races. We must continue to be the winning difference in many of national and local elections. May you all have peace, health, and success. Continue your service to our great country by full participation in our democracy, so we can proudly say, our future generation can say, when time came, we stood for our constitutional values, for equal dignity, and for our democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khizr Khan, for joining us today and for the sacrifice of your family, and also reminding us about our constitutional duties and responsibilities to our communities and societies. So right now, at this time, as we close out the program, it's with a great deal of pride that I have the opportunity to introduce our newest board member, Hurun-Nessa Faryad, who is the Director of Outreach at Adams Center. She'll be closing us out tonight, and thank you all for joining us here today. We look forward to seeing you all in the near future in person.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight on our program, American Muslim Resilience, 20 years after 9/11. My name is Hurun-Nessa Faryad, and I am a board member at the American Muslim Institution and head of outreach at the All Dulles Area Muslim Society. As you heard with all of our great speakers tonight, from Ghazala Hashmi to Governor Terry McAuliffe, to Dean Obeidallah, to Khizr Khan and Attorney General Keith Ellison, the importance and aptitude that we as the American Muslim community have, and for us to be able to express that and reach out to the greater community and make sure that our voices are being heard. We have to work together to be able to do this going on from today into the future, not just for us, but the future of our children and our grandchildren here in the United States. And again, I want to thank all the speakers for coming, all of the board members at American Muslim Institution. Please don't forget to click on the link and donate. We would love to hear also your feedback and any suggestions you may have for further programming at the American Muslim Institution. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining and have a blessed night. Assalamu alaikum.